I'm John Strum, and this is Real Talk MS. It's September 15th, and we have a lot to talk about. But before we get into this week's podcast episode, I want to share that this is a big week for Real Talk MS. Because we're celebrating our third, I'm not sure if it's a birthday or an anniversary, but I am sure that this week, Real Talk MS is beginning our fourth year. So I'm taking a moment to celebrate 159 weekly podcast episodes, a bunch of extra bonus episodes, and 3 extraordinary years. And what's made these past 3 years so special to me is having you along for the ride. So please know how much I appreciate your choosing to be a part of the Real Talk MS listener community. And just in case you're in the mood to help me celebrate 3 years of Real Talk MS, I'd like to invite you to leave a rating and review for the podcast. I found a way to make it super easy for you to leave a rating and review, and I'm hoping some of you won't mind taking just a moment to do that. Here's how it works. If you point your web browser at realtalkms.com/review, you'll see links to the different online destinations that you can choose from to leave that rating and review. And those links will be different for each of you because they're based upon the software that you happen to be using to listen to podcasts or the software that you have installed on your phone, tablet, or desktop computer. For instance, if you happen to be using an Android phone to listen to Real Talk MS, you won't see a link to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts because you can't leave a review on Apple Podcasts with an Android phone. I hope that made sense. It's just a little bit of technology that makes leaving a rating and review super easy. So if you have a spare moment, I hope you'll consider providing me with the ideal 3-year anniversary gift by visiting realtalkms.com/review, clicking on any one of the online destinations that you see, and leaving a rating and review for Real Talk MS. And you'll find that link in today's show notes. I want to give you one more heads up. This past weekend, the largest MS research conference in the world took place virtually. It was the joint ACTRIMS meeting, and it attracted more than 8,000 virtual attendees from over 100 different countries. And you can look forward to an all-ACTRIMS bonus episode of Real Talk MS this Thursday, featuring the news, announcements, and even interviews from the conference. And I'll also mention that because the ACTRIMS meeting was virtual this year, they've actually scheduled an additional day devoted to late-breaking research news and news specific to COVID-19 and its impact on MS. That's going to be happening at the end of this month, so we'll be revisiting this conference a couple of more times in future podcast episodes. Resilience has always been a necessary and important trait for people living with the unpredictability of MS. And living with MS through these uncertain and unprecedented times has made resilience an even more necessary and important trait. My guest today is Dr. Dawn Ehde, a clinical psychologist and professor of rehabilitation medicine at University of Washington Medicine, where Dr. Ehde has an endowed professorship in multiple sclerosis research. Dr. Ehde and her group at UW have conducted several studies on resilience in MS, and we're going to talk with Dr. Ehde about how resilience plays a significant role in someone's overall well-being. We'll look at the science of resilience, and Dr. Ehde will share some specific strategies that you can use to build resilience, even as we're living through the uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic. But before we get to my conversation with Dr. Dawn Ehde, there are a few other things that you should know about. Bafiertam, an FDA-approved bioequivalent to Tecfidera, is now available in the United States to adults with relapsing remitting MS. And just a quick review, a bioequivalent is a drug that provides the same amount of the active ingredient at the proper site of action and at an equivalent dose as the original drug, in this case, Tecfidera. Bafiertam has also demonstrated similar safety and efficacy as Vumerity. Now, Bafiertam's annual list cost of $69,480 makes it the lowest priced oral MS disease-modifying therapy, costing about 30% less than Tecfidera and 20% less than Vumerity. If you'd like to find out more about Bafiertam, you'll find a link in today's show notes. While we're on the subject of disease-modifying therapies, here's what I'll classify as some unfortunate news. A study of more than 5,000 people diagnosed with MS in the United States over a 5-year period showed that almost 2/3 of those people who were newly diagnosed were not prescribed a disease-modifying therapy for the first 2 years following their diagnosis. And that should be a real concern. The American Academy of Neurology, the European Committee for Treatment and Research in Multiple Sclerosis, and the European Academy of Neurology all recommend early treatment with disease-modifying therapies for patients diagnosed with MS. And there were more than 20 medications to choose from. And 100% of the patients in this study had health insurance because the data for the study was collected from a national insurance claims database. Yet, in spite of all that, here we are. And the reason that this is unfortunate news, the reason that it should be a real concern, is that there is ample scientific evidence that shows people who begin MS disease-modifying therapies early have a milder disease course. Disease progression and disability are slower to occur, and that means that quality of life remains better longer. And isn't that everyone's goal? So I'll take this opportunity to say again that if you're living with MS and you're not on a disease-modifying therapy, please have a talk with your neurologist about your options. If you had a bad experience with a particular drug, there are others to choose from. But whether you've started and stopped your DMT or you've never started at all, please be kind to yourself and take the steps that will make a difference, a real difference, in your future quality of life. Now, if you'd like to review the details of this study, you'll find a link in today's show notes, and I'll also suggest that if you didn't catch last week's episode of Real Talk MS, you may want to visit realtalkms.com/158. The entire episode is devoted to a conversation about MS disease-modifying therapies with Johns Hopkins neurologist Dr. Scott Newsom. I don't often suggest past episodes of the podcast. I appreciate that everyone's already busy enough. But in my opinion, last week's episode is the can't-miss Real Talk MS episode of the year. And once again, you'll find it at realtalkms.com/158. Understanding Multiple Sclerosis is a free 6-week online course designed to improve the understanding and awareness of MS for people living with MS, MS caregivers, medical and nursing professionals, patient advocates, and really anyone interested in gaining insight into what living with MS is all about. The course was developed by the Menzies Institute for Medical Research at the University of Tasmania in Australia, and I had an opportunity to talk about this course with Susie Claflin, a postdoctoral research fellow at the Menzies Institute for Medical Research and the academic lead for this project. In a moment, we'll hear my conversation about understanding multiple sclerosis with Susie Claflin. Susie Claflin is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Menzies Institute for Medical Research at the University of Tasmania in Australia. And she's the academic lead of a free 6-week online course offered through Class Central called Understanding MS, which I want to be sure to add was ranked the #1 online course among the more than 2,400 courses released in 2019 based on participant reviews. Welcome to the podcast, Susie.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
So please tell us about Understanding MS.
I'd love to. So Understanding MS is a 6-week online course. It's completely free. And in those 6 weeks, we walk through lots of different aspects of MS. We go from week 1, where we talk about the biology and pathology underlying MS. We're talking about what's actually happening in the body. And then we sort of move through, maybe, I guess a way I've thought about it is sort of increasing in scale. So we start talking about cells and, very small things that are happening inside the body. And then we scale up talking about symptoms, so what's happening to the body itself. And then we talk about the demographics of the MS community. So that's groups of people. And then we scale up from there and talk about disease management. And we talk about its impact on everyday life. And we talk about things like its impact on employment and those sort of really large topics.
That sounds really complete, and I love where you start. I'm a bit of an amateur science geek, so I tend to believe that if you really do want to understand MS, you'll quickly understand that all the stuff happening is happening at the cellular level.
Absolutely. I think there was some debate about where to start the course. Where should we begin in the sort of story of talking about MS? And it seemed to us that it was really important to at least have some understanding of what was happening at that sort of cellular level to understand why the symptoms happen the way they do. It's once you understand the pathology of MS, once you understand what's happening in the body, it becomes clear why symptoms can affect any body system, because the actual pathology of MS is affecting the central nervous system which controls all the body systems. So that kind of connection is only possible when you have the information about the pathology.
Can I ask, what was it that motivated you and your team to create this course?
That's a great question. It's been the most rewarding project I've ever worked on. I've so enjoyed working on it, and the main goal of the project was to raise awareness and understanding about MS, both within the MS community and outside the MS community. So the people who take this course, a lot of them are people who are inside the MS community. They're people living with MS. They're family and friends of people living with MS. They're service providers. They're healthcare providers. But there's also a fairly significant portion of people who are simply interested. And so cumulatively, that raises awareness in the community generally about MS, which we hope will improve the lives of people living with MS.
Well, I was about to ask you who the course was for, but I think you just did a great job of kind of pointing out that really if you are affected by MS directly or indirectly, it sounds like the course has something to offer you. And if you're not affected by MS but curious, it sounds like there's something there as well. Absolutely.
And inside the course, there are multiple sort of lines of videos. So the main content of the course, the core content, is presented by academics and researchers who are talking about the evidence around particular topics. But there are also 2 other series of videos that sit alongside the core content of the course that present personal experience and lived experience from people living with MS and other members of the MS community. So that includes neurologists, exercise physiologists, MS nurses, carers, and they present their lived experience. So even if you are a person who is, say, very well versed in the pathology of MS, you may not have gotten a chance to have a glimpse of the lived experience. And so I think there really is something for everyone to gain from looking at the content of the course.
Given that remarkable #1 ranking, it's pretty clear that you've received positive reviews. What have you heard? What sort of reactions are you getting from people who have already completed the course?
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's one of the reasons it's been so gratifying. It's been really lovely. There's been a lot of really lovely feedback. In general, 97% of the people that we've surveyed have said that they're satisfied or very satisfied with the course, or rate it sort of above average. And I'd say, the things people say is that it will be helpful to them, which is really important to me as somebody who's put the course together. It's sort of our ultimate goal is to help people. And so one of the most gratifying things that has been said by people who've taken the course is that the information in the course will be helpful to them in circumstances like for people living with MS, speaking to their healthcare providers, asking questions about their symptoms, asking questions about their MRIs. In those sorts of contexts, they feel that the information that's been provided will be helpful in those contexts. I've seen comments from people talking about from other corners of the MS community, so family and friends, talking about that it might improve their ability to communicate with the person in their life living with MS about their MS, those sorts of things. So those are some of the ways in which we've seen people report that they'll use the information, which is sort of our ultimate goal, that we're providing information that might be helpful.
Your course covers an awful lot of information over 6 weeks, but what would you say are the biggest takeaways from the course?
It's hard to say because I think it would depend on the person. In Module 2, we talk about the invisible symptoms. And for people not living with MS, I think one of the main takeaways from the course, hopefully, is greater empathy about the experience of living with MS. We dedicate an entire discussion board to talking about how invisible symptoms might impact the experience of someone living with MS. And I hope that what people take away from that is an increased awareness that not every symptom is visible in your interactions with another person. So that's one main takeaway from the course, I hope. The central theme of the course is that there's been a lot of research done on MS, and there is a lot of evidence out there. The other sort of feature of there being this information is we do cover how to appraise information. And I think that's another hopeful takeaway that I have for the course, is that people come away feeling like they're more capable or empowered to look through health-related information, particularly about MS, because that's what we cover in this course, but really all health information. They feel more equipped to assess it and say, like, is this legitimate information? Is this information I can trust, or is this information I should be dubious of? So there's a section in one of the modules of the course where we go over how to appraise health information. And then we also have an activity where people can choose to do this or not, but they can go out and find a piece of, an article about MS and assess it, and I will go through and read it and give them feedback on their assessment. It just gives people an opportunity to practice assessing that information.
That in itself is remarkable. Seriously, in my opinion, if your course did nothing other than simply teach people how to assess information, it would be a home run by itself. I don't have to tell you the amount of misinformation that is out there waiting to be consumed is overwhelming. And so often people look for an answer and their intention is good. They unfortunately end up settling for the wrong answer, settling for someone's opinion masquerading as a fact. And at the end of the day, that doesn't serve anyone well. So I am thrilled to hear that.
Well, John, thanks very much. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the underpinning goals of the course is to compile evidence-based information. So the information presented in the core content of the course is all evidence-based. It's the best information we have as of now. It will continue to evolve, and we plan to update the course when there are sort of large shifts in our understanding. But one of the goals was to go out there and compile that information together into a sort of coherent narrative, because it can be so difficult to find, because there's all of this information that sort of crowds it out, all of that misinformation that sort of can swamp the actual evidence that's out there. So what we've hopefully achieved is putting that evidence into a format that can be readily accessed by people. So that's what we're hoping to have done. So
the really important question, how do people register for Understanding MS?
That's a great question. So you can register at ms.mooc, mooc.utas.edu.au. And the next enrollment opens on September 14th. As of right now, we have about 4,000 people who've registered for more than 100 countries. So you'll be in good company with people from all over the world who will be taking the course. And the registrations will be open until probably about the end of September.
I'm going to go ahead and include that link in today's show notes to make it easy for our listeners to be able to just point, click, and register. This is a course that I'm going to be taking, and I thought I understood MS, but it sounds like you're doing really great things and can never have too much good evidence-based information.
Well, I look forward to hearing your feedback, John.
Susie Claflin, thank you for creating just an outstanding virtual tool that allows people affected by MS to better understand the disease. And understanding is kind of the first step you want to take to relieve a lot of anxiety that you otherwise might have. So I appreciate what you and your team are doing, and thanks for taking a few minutes to talk with me today.
Thank you, John. It's been great to be here.
Being Black and living with MS brings unique challenges and experiences, from scientific and clinical differences in the disease itself to coming face to face with the stark inequities that unfortunately exist in our healthcare system today. So I want to remind you that the National MS Society is hosting the Black MS Experience Summit, an interactive 3-day virtual event that's going to take place September 22nd through the 24th. The summit will be an opportunity to connect with others who understand the distinct experience of living with MS as a Black person. Summit participants will not only forge powerful connections, they'll also learn from leading scientific and healthcare experts while giving voice to the Black MS community. If you or your family is affected by MS in the African American community, you'll find a link to more information and no-cost registration in today's show notes. We've all heard the expression that you can't control the weather, but you can learn to dance in the rain. Developing resilience teaches you how to dance in the rain. My guest today is Dr. Dawn Ehde, a clinical psychologist and professor of rehabilitation medicine at University of Washington Medicine, where Dr. Ehde has an endowed professorship in multiple sclerosis research. Dr. Ehde is an expert in understanding resilience, and she's here to explain why having resilience is so important to improving the well-being of people affected by MS, and how to go about building your resilience, even in the midst of all the craziness we're seeing in the world today. In a moment, we'll meet my guest, Dr. Dawn Ehde. When it comes to learning to live your best life, resilience may be one of the most important traits that someone affected by MS can develop. Because of its unpredictability, an MS journey rarely resembles a straight path, and resilience can carry you through the unexpected twists and turns that MS brings. My guest today is Dr. Dawn Ehde, a clinical psychologist and professor of rehabilitation medicine at UW-Medicine, where Dr. Ehde has an endowed professorship in multiple sclerosis research. Dr. Ehde and her group at UW have conducted several studies on resilience in MS and published those results in a variety of peer-reviewed scientific journals. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Ehde.
Thank you.
I always like to get everybody on the same page by defining our terms, so I'm hoping that you can give us a definition of exactly what resilience is.
So resilience is the capacity to adapt to and persist in the face of adversity or ongoing stressors. So things like health concerns like those faced by people with MS. Certainly a diagnosis of MS can be seen as a pretty extreme stressor that people can respond in a resilient manner, as well as just the daily hassles of life, of living with a chronic condition. Our team was really interested in looking at what resilience was to people living with MS. And so we did a variety of focus groups and interviews with people with MS. And really what we heard was that it was very similar to the more general definition of resilience, that to people with MS, resilience is the capacity to bounce back from and maintain function and well-being in the face of adversity and challenges.
Is resilience something that naturally exists within us, or is it sort of a learned response?
It's really a bit of both. So research has indicated that people really have kind of a set point of resilience, kind of a baseline level of resilience that they have, that's probably due in part to genetics, to our biology, and to early childhood experiences. The good news is that this accounts only for probably about 50% of resilience when they've looked at it in a quantitative study, and that the other 50% really comes from skills that can be learned, practiced, employed for meeting the challenges, what comes with living with MS and life in general.
Well, we're going to circle back to some of those learned skills, but I'm curious, though. I know that some people think about resilience as learning how to block out their negative thoughts or feelings. But is that really a fair definition?
No. Resilience is not the absence of discouragement or anxiety or frustration or sadness or stress. Resilience, doesn't mean you don't experience those things. It's more what you do with them and how you work through them. So, as said by somebody who lives with MS, Danya Baines, as part of an MS Society program that I was part of a few years ago, she said it's about bouncing back up and finding ways to adjust your life, pushing forward regardless of what's going on. So it's really what you make of what happens to you and finding ways to get through what can be some very difficult emotions at times and coming out on the other side.
When or how can being resilient be particularly useful to someone who's living with MS?
It can be particularly useful in a variety of ways because, as everyone knows, MS is can be challenging because it's so different for different people. It's unpredictable. There's just a lot of changes and fluctuations that people have to deal with. So, it can be particularly beneficial to have strategies and ways of kind of being flexible and bouncing back with those the variety of challenges that can come with living with MS. Research has also shown us that in people with MS, when people's resilience goes up, when it's increased, people tend to report that their mood improves, their symptom management or ability to manage their symptom improves, their sleep improves, just their overall functioning and ability to engage in life improves, including their relationships. So we know that resilience is something that can be improved, and that for people with MS, that they can do better and feel better if they're more resilient.
We often talk about people who are living with MS and people who are affected by MS because we know that MS affects families and not just individuals. So what's the value and importance of building resilience for family caregivers and other family members?
Well, as you said, we know that MS doesn't just affect the person with it. So it's very helpful both to the person with MS and to the family and the friends and network around that person if everyone works together and is resilient in their own ways so that it benefits everybody and certainly benefits relationships when resilience is something that everyone has or is working on. I think an important point of this is that not everybody responds the same, or what one person may do, or one person's resilience might look different than another person's in the family, and people respond to situations in different ways, and to stressors in different ways, and there's no one right or wrong way to be resilient and to deploy resilience in the context of MS. And so it's really important that families, people living with MS, respect that everyone has their own way of being resilient, and that most of which are normal ways, or all of which are normal ways, and to be respectful of each other's styles, but knowing that if the family and the person can nurture their resilience, that'll have benefits to everyone.
Well, speaking about the benefits of resilience, what role does resilience play in someone's overall well-being?
Well, we know that people who are resilient, and this has been shown in a few studies in people with MS, tend to just have better health. That does not mean that, they tend to have better health. So that includes things like that they maybe have better functioning, physical functioning, that they tend to have better sleep, they tend to have less stress-related illnesses, and they tend to report just general higher levels of well-being. Having said that, I want to point out that resilience is not very related to how severe a person's MS is. We've seen in studies, and I see it in working with people, that people can have different severity of MS and can have quite severe MS, in fact, and be quite resilient and do well and have a good life in the context of living with severe disease. So, it's really something that can benefit people regardless of their disease severity or their particular symptoms. And it can be really helpful to people in managing the effects of the disease.
It's hard to be talking about resilience right now without acknowledging that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused just unprecedented challenges and real hardships for so many people. So can we talk about resilience during the time of the pandemic?
Yeah, this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately and talking with people, with my colleagues and people with MS. I think the first thing is just we have to all acknowledge that this is a tough time for many reasons. Certainly, the threats of COVID-19 to people living with MS and their health, should they catch it, concerns that people have, concerns that people have about their families and loved ones, and a lot of the ways that people manage their lives and their disease are stymied by the pandemic. So for example, I've heard a lot of people talking about how they can't go to the gym, or they can't go to their in-person social events, or see their family, or do things that are really important to their well-being and important to their resilience. So I think it just adds some complexity to managing MS and to being resilient. Having said that, I think that people with MS are very good at dealing with uncertainty by virtue of MS being a very uncertain disease for many, and I think have a lot of strengths that they bring to the pandemic and all of its effects. And I think it's kind of recognizing that this is a difficult time, and that that they've gone through difficult things before and continue to, and that they can have a number of opportunities to be resilient. It's interesting too. I've also noticed, just looking at the literature, there have been, I think, 3 or 4 studies, both international as well as within the U.S., looking at people with MS and how they're doing with the pandemic. And what's interesting is that we have not seen a huge uptick in depression or anxiety for people with MS during the pandemic. Maybe a slight uptick in anxiety, but not a big one. And in other words, most people with MS are coping well despite the pandemic. We did see that it seems to be that people who are not doing so well with the pandemic are more stressed by it, more anxious by it, tend to be younger. And, we don't know why that is, but I know in our own research, we hypothesize it may be that younger people with MS are having to just manage so much more with fewer resources. So they may be having to manage the demands of working remotely while having children at home, having to try to educate their children if their schools are closed. or open only to remote learning. They may have been furloughed or laid off, or just, a variety of stressors that come from what's going on in our current situation. So, it's not to say it's not hard, but I think people with MS are well equipped in dealing with MS and have strengths that they can deploy to getting through this pandemic and all of its effects.
A couple of minutes ago, you mentioned strategies for building resilience. So I wanted to be sure we circle back to talk about some specific strategies that people who are listening can use to build their resilience.
Sure. As I mentioned, the good news is that there's a lot you can do, a lot of strategies. And I think the first step is to really take kind of a self-assessment or kind of reflect on what are you already doing to manage your MS, to manage the stresses in your life, the stress of living with MS. What are you already doing that makes you resilient? Maybe you haven't thought of it in terms of resilience, but looking at those, maybe writing some of those down. What I find and what the research bears out is that many people already have a lot of strengths that they bring to the situation, and maybe just don't think about them as strengths. They just sort of take them for granted. But looking at, what are you doing right already versus focusing so much on what you're not doing right. Asking yourself, what has helped in the past? How have I gotten through challenges? What do I know about myself? And what are some skills or resources I can use to face my current challenges? And thinking about those and very deliberately recognizing and using those and planning on how to use those going forward. So that's a big one, using existing strengths. Another strategy is really looking at how you interact with others and trying to make sure that you are staying connected socially. It can be easy, especially for introverts, to kind of pull in or kind of isolate or do less with others because of MS or because of MS and because of the limitations of the pandemic. Currently, I think it's really important to look to really nurture those relationships that bring you joy, that you feel you contribute to and get something out of. Not spending much time, if any, on relationships that aren't nurturing and supportive. Sometimes we can't do that because of their family or what have you, but really trying to stay connected to others, both friends and family, as well as maybe community activities, even if it has to be done virtually currently. So that would be another thing. And then there's this whole set of stress management tools that we could talk about as well, but that's things like using relaxation training, where you learn how to focus on your breath, maybe pair it with some relaxing imagery, but really very deliberately cultivating this kind of calming, soothing, kind of physiological or physical response that's the opposite of stress response. Or mindfulness meditation. There's many different ways people can learn some of these skills. And one of the things we know about resilience is it's not that having strong emotions, or what sometimes people call negative emotions, although I don't like that term very much, but just emotions like anger or frustration or sadness or grief or anxiety. There's nothing wrong with those emotions, but taking the time to try to cope with them and move through them, and trying to really savor those emotions, those positive emotions that you can also that you also could feel from even simple things in your day-to-day life. So, and that's another type of strategy, is really taking the time, even just in small little chunks, of doing things that just feel good, things that bring you a little bit of joy, that generate some kind of positive mood or positive emotion. I had one person who would read a funny comic every day, or listen to some uplifting music, or touch base with a friend and just joke around. I mean, there's a lot of ways we can try to really trigger positive emotions, and those things help us in the long run when we have to cope with more difficult things. And then I think, there's the whole idea of how we think about things in our perspective, and looking at ways to look at how you're thinking through things, and are there other alternative ways that might help you feel better and make you more resilient. And certainly that's not to say that resilience is underestimating or ignoring the challenges, but to really look at adversity less as a threat and more as a challenge that you can work to meet. Research has shown that when resilient people tend to perceive adversity as a challenge, and those who are less resilient tend to see it as a threat. And that resilience has less to do with how many or how severe your challenges are and more how you view and respond to them. So there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot we can do to build our resilience.
Dr. Dawn Ehde, thank you for giving us some tools to fill up our resilience building toolbox. Thank you for all that you do to improve the lives of people affected by MS every single day. And thanks for talking with me today.
Thank you, John.
Well, that's going to wrap up this episode, and it's going to kick off year number 4 for Real Talk MS. Real Talk MS is powered by the National MS Society. And you can share this episode of the podcast by letting your friends or family members know that all they have to do is point their web browser at realtalkms.com/159. You'll find that link in today's show notes so you can easily copy and paste it right into an email or text. I don't think I have to tell anyone listening to this podcast that the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified and in some cases multiplied the challenges of living with MS. More than ever before, people living with MS need access to reliable information, support, and connection. We're witnessing that even during a pandemic, MS doesn't stop, and neither does the National MS Society. With vital funding from supporters like you, the National MS Society is continuing to meet the urgent and expanding needs of the MS community during these unprecedented times, while ensuring that the MS research community rebounds quickly from COVID-19 so that the progress and momentum toward finding a cure continues. And that's why I hope that as you're able, you'll make a donation to the Society's COVID-19 Response Fund. It couldn't be easier. Just text the word GIVE to 68686 and you'll get a link right to the MS Society's COVID-19 Response Fund webpage. I hope you'll consider contributing today because it's never been more important. I'm John Strum. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and make healthy choices.